Hi, I'm Dani.
And I'm Si. Welcome to Business in the Brew, a podcast dedicated to all things business with the occasional cuppa.
We take a business story, theory, or something we just want to chat about and give it a dusting of our own special personality and sense of humour, combined with our experience and knowledge. We're both business graduates and have run our own businesses for many years. We can't wait for you to listen.
Hello there.
Hello.
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 Right.
What you do?
Well, sitting here, melting slowly, actually.
It's very toasty.
Yes. Right. Okay. This particular episode is actually it's a continuation of a previous episode that we did on the contaminated blood scandal. So if you're of a nervous disposition or don't want to hear anything that's a little bit sad, then switch off.
Don't listen to any of Simon's episodes.
Demarketing for you. We've just been talking about that. Okay. To start this one up, okay. So we've talked about contaminated blood, but this is a very specific case, and it kind of makes you cross. Like, there's a few episodes that we've done recently where I feel a little bit cross about it.
What's your favourite thing?
Yeah. So there's people who knew exactly what they were doing in this, and this was covered up for decades, and so it's part of the wider contaminated blood scandal. But I want to focus specifically at what happened at a school, Lord Mayor Treloar College in Hampshire.
I grew up in Hampshire.
Yeah, I know, and that's why I wondered if you knew about this.
No, Hampshire's quite big.
Yes. So I'm going to call this Treloar College, just in short. But it appears to be one of the most egregious examples of institutional betrayal in modern history.
Egregious example
of institutional betrayal.
That's nice. Poetic.
And because it has a direct corporate dimension, it often gets lost. I'm going to set the scene with this is all about haemophilia, actually, which is where the blood scandal kind of got hooked up on previously, along with other diseases. But it's a genetic condition, haemophilia. Mostly affects boys and men, prevents the blood from clotting properly. Okay, a small cut, a bump, an internal bleed, and without treatment, these could be fatal. For most of human history, haemophilia was death sentence, often in childhood. And then in the 1970s, something extraordinary happened. Medicine,
inverted commas,
the whole medicine thing, developed factor VIII concentrate. It's a treatment derived from human blood plasma that replaced the missing clotting factor, and it could be injected at home. For the first time, boys with haemophilia could live something approaching a normal life.
Oh, nice for them.
So it was a bit like a miracle. Now, it pretty much was. And Treloar's College was at the forefront of it. The college had a specialist haemophilia treatment centre, one of the best in the country. Boys with haemophilia were educated there specifically because they could receive cutting-edge care. And parents sent their sons there, trusting that they were in the safest possible hands. And in the 1970s and 80s, around 122 boys with haemophilia received treatment at that centre.
To be clear, there was a school for haemophiliacs.
Yeah, it was part of the there's kind of a school and college that's part of it. Yeah. Yeah. So of those 122, 72 are now dead. It's pretty...
That's a way to segue into some happy news. Thank you.
Did you come here looking for happy news?
From you?
You're
no,
on the wrong podcast.
It was your turn to talk. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I will be doing episodes that bring a smile, hopefully, at some point.
Really?
Yeah. So I'll just explain how it happened. So the biggest scandal was that factor VIII was made by pooling human blood plasma from thousands of donors. We have gone into this before, but I need to just recap on it.
Especially if they're not listened. They might be newbies.
Yes, exactly. Might just come in at this one. Sometimes up to 40,000 donors per batch. And the logic was that pooling increased the available supply and concentrated the clotting factor. Well, the catastrophic problem was this. If just one of those 40,000 donors was infected, the entire batch was contaminated. And in the 1970s, the UK was importing large quantities of this concentrate from the US, where it was collected from paid donors, including prisoners, including people who injected drugs, populations with significantly elevated rates of blood-borne infection and or risk of.
So vulnerable people who couldn't say otherwise and who potentially were sporting a load of
and often they were induced because they could sell their blood. Yeah. Okay. No one raised concerns. Well, they did raise concerns. As early as 1982, the first death of a man with haemophilia infected by AIDS was reported. In 1983, warnings were published in The Lancet. The World Health Organization issued guidance. Scientists knew that blood supply carried risk. Heat treatment to inactivate viruses had been developed, and yet the contaminated products continued to be used. Haemophiliacs, 6,000 of them were given infected plasma. This is the bigger picture, not the school. The boys continued to receive them at Treloar's and other haemophilia centres across the country. So, yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Well, the Infected Blood Inquiry, which published its first report in 2024, only a couple of years ago, May 2024, concluded that this was not simply negligence, it was deliberate choice.
It'll do.
The inquiry found that clinicians to the NHS, the government had knowingly exposed patients to unacceptable risks and had then attempted to conceal what had happened. Documents were destroyed, data was altered, patients were not told they'd been infected, in some cases for years, in some cases ever. And at Treloar's specifically, there was something even more disturbing. The boys there were not just being treated, they were being used as research subjects, guinea pigs, or as one boy put it, laboratory rats.
Sorry, in what way?
Well, the experimental side of these drugs was being used on them.
Oh.
Yeah,
not
so
with
they were being
permission,
treated for haemophilia.
Told that it was a perfectly safe, this is a tried-and-tested method.
I don't exactly know what was said to them, but without their knowledge, without their parents' knowledge, clinicians at the centre were conducting clinical trials on children, testing different products, testing different doses, observing the progression of disease.
Without someone's permission, that's
the
disgusting.
Inquiry heard testimony and examined documentary evidence that made clear that this was deliberate and systematic. The government's compensation scheme has established a specific supplementary award, which is above a standard payment for those that were subjected to unethical research. And for Treloar's boys specifically, acknowledges that that's what was done to them. It was unethical research. So even though Treloar's received no payments directly for their participation, they were complicit in the scandal. There were some grants, I think, that were issued for them, and at least 72 of those pupils died after being infected with HIV and viral hepatitis, where they were treated with infected blood products.
That's
pretty
disgusting.
vile. Pharmaceutical companies kind of fit into this. It's the corporate dimension of the story. So the contaminated blood products didn't appear by magic. They were
just rocked up one day on the step, left in a box.
They were manufactured and sold by pharmaceutical companies, including some of the biggest names in the industry. They knew that pooled blood plasma from high-risk donors carried elevated infection risks. Some internal documents suggest they were aware of the problem earlier than they publicly acknowledged. They continued to sell the products anyway. In the United States, as I said before, they've been moving to heat-treated, safer products, and in the UK, those safer products were available, but not universally adopted.
I imagine they were more expensive.
Yeah, the inquiry found the decision not to switch to continue using cheaper, contaminated products was taken without knowledge of the risks involved. With knowledge of the risks involved, rather. And how long did this last for? Decades. Multiple governments, Labour, Conservative, Liberal Democrat, resisted calls for a public inquiry. Victims and their families spent 30, 40 years fighting for acknowledgement while watching friends and loved ones die. Former pupil Gary Webster, who was infected with both HIV and Hep C at Treloar's in the 1970s and 80s, has spent much of his life, his adult life, campaigning. He reflected on the compensation eventually offered in 2024 and said simply, "Is £60,000 enough for a life?"
That must be awful, thinking that's what your life's worth.
Yeah. The answer, of course, is no. No amount is. But the question of whether these children, these kids, these boys sent to a school by parents who trusted the system were owed honesty, informed consent and protection has a very clear answer. They were. Yeah. Yes. And they didn't get it from the school, from the NHS, from the pharmaceutical companies who supplied the blood products, from the successive governments who chose to look the other way. You just can't believe it, can you?
No.
So the Infected Blood Inquiry's final report in 2024 called it what it was, the worst treatment disaster in the history of the NHS, and in a healthcare system with a rich and complicated history that is profoundly damning as an epitaph.
It is.
Yeah. So the Gary Webster I mentioned before. I mentioned that he'd been campaigning for acknowledgement and justice not just for himself, but for more than 80 of his schoolmates who are no longer here to do it themselves. 72, I should say. When the Infected Blood Inquiry finally published, it was just 50 years after many of these children were infected. He was there. And the inquiry's chair, Sir Brian Langstaff, used a phrase I think deserves to be heard. He said to the cover-up, and he used that word explicitly. He said to the cover-up, use that word explicitly. He had added to the pain of what was already a disaster. Yeah. Yeah, because it was a cover-up, and it was a cover-up that was already a disaster. And having acknowledged it officially must really mean something from him. And it's not enough. Nothing could be enough. When you've spent 40 years being told it wasn't anyone's fault, it's just one of those things. There's nothing to be done. Having a judge stand up in public and say, this was wrong, this was covered up, these children deserve better. That's something. It's late, it's inadequate, but it is something at least. Yeah. And actually, there has been an acknowledgement and an apology from Treloar's School and College. And that was just from May last year. It's on the website, and I'm going to read it because it's quite poignant. We sincerely apologise to our former students and their families who were so devastatingly infected and affected by the infected blood scandal. We apologise too for the criticism contained in the report. The treatment by clinicians of pupils at Treloar's in the 1970s and 80s was unethical and wrong. The way in which the diagnosis of infection was communicated was insensitive and wrong. In other cases, failure to communicate positive tests for HIV at all was unconscionable and wrong. The inquiry's report lays bare the full extent of this horrifying national scandal. We're deeply saddened that some of our former pupils were so tragically infected and their families affected, and we expect the government to implement its compensation plans without further delay. On a recent visit to school and college, some of our former pupils raised with us the need for a more public and accessible memorial. A public memorial dedicated to former Treloar pupils is an important recommendation of the inquiry's report, and we're fully committed to ensuring that this happens and all those impacted at Treloar's are remembered. Yeah, so, yeah, we expect the government to implement its compensation plans.
I feel like that was a little bit... sorry about that, but the government will handle it now, so don't worry about that too much. We're going to build a nice memorial, though. Yeah. You can come and visit.
Well, yeah, and I kind of think they could have left that bit out about the compensation plan, because it kind of cheapens the apology.
And potentially also the headmaster or the management team that are in place now in the college were not the one that were in place at the time, so you're also apologising for something that used to do, but it still needs an apology. So
it all needs acknowledging, and they have done it. And I think it's brilliant that they have done that.
It's an incredibly politically written letter, though.
But it is absolutely. But it's just a really terrible tale from another time when actually.
But realistically, not that long ago.
No, I get that, but. Yeah.
We need a drink now. Can we go and get a drink?
I think that's the last one that we'll be doing on contaminated blood.
Thank God.
Yeah. Okay.
And I can't deal with any more deaths today.
No.
Fair enough.
No more. No more today. Okay.
Can I go and have a lie down and a drink?
Thank you very much for listening.
No problem at all. You're welcome.
Thanks for supporting us by downloading and listening to this episode.
And a massive thank you also to Donnie, Emily, Nat and Lewis and the BTD Studios for all your expertise in bringing our podcasting dream to reality.
We'd love it if you commented on this episode, as we'd really like to know what you think and what you might like us to cover in future episodes.
And we'll see you on the next one.